So welcome to our third Thursday training conversation. It's more of a conversation today than a training in the September 2024. Tonight we're going to be looking at the current draft guidelines for employment and compensation, which had had to undergo some significant change because of the significant changes in the Board of Pensions, which I'm sure you are all aware of. But before we dive into that, let's pray. So please join me in prayer. Gracious and loving God, thank you for all that you are doing in our midst, in the midst of our lives, in the midst of our churches, in the midst of this presbytery. Thank you for the ways that you are showing up and blessing us as we seek to be faithful. One of the ways we seek to be faithful is in compensation. And so be with us as we go through the pieces of that tonight, the pieces that are particular in the Presbyterian Church, and look forward to how those changes will impact our ministry and impact our pastoral leaders. So guide us, help us, ask good questions so that we all understand, and be with us in this conversation. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So, as I said, tonight's topic, which I think you all know, that's why you're here, is to walk through what's coming from our Commission on Ministers and Congregations uh, as a proposed replacement for our current compensation and employment guidelines. And if you haven't looked at it already, you can find it on our assembly meeting page, and I'll pull that up, give you the link directly to the document in the chat here. But I'm going to share screen so we can look at it together. But that's what we're looking at. Yeah, so I'm going to share screen so we can jump in. Which screen am I sharing? I'm sharing this screen. All right. Um, so I don't need to go over the table of contents except to point out that even the table of contents are different, reflecting the changes. And so one of the things I'll say at this point is in putting together this document, which is meant to be a support to our sessions and our pastoral leaders, to any of our personnel or HR committees, it mirrors the new reporting form that we're going to use. And we'll take a look at the form as well tonight, but the order of the items that make up a term of call mirrors that. So hopefully, side by side, it creates a good resource. This first section didn't change very much, but if you're ever looking for a way to talk with your session to help deepen understanding of why the Presbyterian Church, in particular, our church, has the requirements we have, it is because we have a theologically informed view of our compensation. It's not just paying somebody to do a job. It is drawn from the biblical witness as well as our own understanding of what it takes to be healthy in this world. If we in the Presbyterian Church had our way, all compensation would be ordered in a similar fashion. All compensation would include a high degree of vacation, an expectation for the opportunities for something like continuing education, that it wouldn't just be limited to our pastoral leaders. But we only have authority to set the terms of compensation and employment guidelines for our pastoral leaders within the church. Um, but we definitely believe that this should be for everybody. It's not a special thing just for pastors. Trying to offer explanation of terms, something that we in this draft are trying to be more intentional about is the use of the language terms of call. Because the compensation for our pastoral leaders is not just cash, it's not just salary. It is a holistic understanding. And so shifting to terms of call, whether a pastor is installed or not, acknowledging that a call between a session pastor and presbytery or a call between a congregation pastor and presbytery are both calls. They're both calls that have been confirmed by the bodies and blessed by God. So you'll see this particular language, terms of call, used more intentionally throughout this document, where the generic term compensation, as you see, refers to any and all remuneration. Um, but when we talk about the whole, we're going to use the language terms of call. Categories, just to remind ourselves that we have different categories for the purposes of compensation. Called and installed is when the pastoral leader is elected by the congregation. And so whether full-time, part-time, or for a designated term, it is the congregation that elects, and then there's a service of installation. Everything else in our current language is called a temporary pastoral leadership. Um, Temporary pastoral leadership can last for decades. It's a bit of a misnomer. Um, if I was queen of the world, it would be different. Uh, but what it refers to is it's the session electing the pastoral leader. So called and installed is the congregation electing the pastoral leader. Temporary pastoral relationship, regardless of the length of time, is the session electing the pastoral leader. And so that's something for us to keep in mind. In either case, they are still the pastoral leader. They're still the real pastor. Uh, Then we also have validated and specialized ministries and limited pastoral services, which are touched on in this document, but are not the meat of this document. So going from there, we start diving into the terms of call elements. And like I said, this now mirrors what our new terms of call form looks like in terms of the order. And so it begins with something that may be especially particular to the Presbyterian Church, and that is the kinds of leave that are required, our minimums in our terms of call. So first, vacation, minimum of 4 weeks, minimum of 4 weeks vacation. And that's regardless of the amount of time. Because if you're part-time, a week of vacation is like 2 days, right? Depending on how much time you're working. So minimum of 4 weeks of vacation with a fifth week added after 20 years of ordained ministry. And vacation should be used on an annual basis. It's not meant to be rolled over. A session and pastor can make that arrangement because of a particular circumstance, but it's meant to be used every year. Study leave also is a requirement with a minimum of 2 weeks study leave. That also is true whether you're full-time or part-time. I will say for both vacation and study leave, it is prorated if your contract is less than a year. So if it's a 6-month contract, you don't get 4 or 5 weeks of vacation. you get half of that. And same thing with study leave. If it's a 6-month contract, you get half of the minimum, um, which hopefully makes sense. Uh, we also have a minimum requirement of a $500 continuing education reimbursement, which is touched on later. But that's part of our study leave minimum. And if anyone has any questions, jump in because I may not see you because of, how Zoom is. So don't hesitate to interrupt. Okay, go ahead. But you need to unmute.
That's what I'm doing.
Perfect.
Um, I'd like some more clarity with the, I think it's in the number of years of service. We've always gone to the terms of call is for our minister. We called 2000, great year 2020. But in the form itself, it then says, but after, I think, 20 years in the ministry,
Yes.
that's 5 weeks. Well, is the ministry beyond the number of years that a pastor is with a specific church? Our
Yes.
pastor has been 4, but I honestly can't say if he's had a total of 20
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, it is based on the number of years of ordained ministry as
Okay.
opposed to a sabbatical, which is specific to the time served in a particular church. So for instance, this year is my 25th ordination anniversary, and I've served in multiple settings. I've served here in Newcastle for almost 4 years now. But as my 25th ordination anniversary, I do receive 5 weeks of vacation. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm going to move on to family leave. And family leave is a book of order requirement. Um, and that was added after the General Assembly in 2022. It was voted on by a majority of the presbytery, so it is a book of order mandate. A minimum of 12 weeks paid family leave, including benefits. And that it's meant to be a protection. It's meant to cover things like maternity or paternity leave, um, leave due to illness or disability, either of the pastoral leader or for an immediate family member. It's meant to provide leave in the case of death or changes in family circumstances. Our presbytery has been blessed with some financial resources. And so, in a couple of instances now, we have had pastors need to take family leave, and we have helped the church cover the cost of pastoral coverage because the church continues to pay both the salary and the benefits. So the terms of call, they continue to fulfill the terms of call for their pastor even while they're on leave. And that may be a financial stretch to bring in other pastoral leadership. So that's something we are able to help with. And I just want to lift up here at the end of this first paragraph. Family can mean a lot of things, and so instead of trying to define who's included when we talk about family leave, we are seeking to leave that open so that the pastoral leader may be able to take leave in the event of a death of somebody who is family, even if they're not directly related or immediate family. And I'll give you a quick example. Um, Many of you know my dad was a career naval officer. We moved all around. I saw my cousins, uh, I don't know, 3 or 4 times growing up. We are not close. But in the first church I served, one of the members had a cousin die, and they were like siblings. They spent every day together. They spent summers together. Um, in her case, it would be appropriate for her to ask for family leave because her cousin was like a sibling. Where in my case, I might ask for a few days to go to a funeral, but it wouldn't be the same impact. So that's why we're trying to provide some flexibility. Um, yeah. So that's the family leave. And then we've added language about the sabbatical here. Pastors after 6 years of ministry in the same congregation are eligible for a 3 month sabbatical. And we have an entire appendix. Appendix J in the manual provides that guidance. But then pastors and sessions are also able to negotiate other kinds of leave. Um, for instance, we have a couple of pastors who, as part of their terms of call, have a Sunday off a month for another purpose. Either to visit a different church. I mean, it doesn't really matter. That was part of what they negotiated with the session as part of their terms of call. Um, the pastors may also negotiate how they take their leave. Coming from the northern New England area, many pastors took the entire month of August off. And so that was something they stated up front, and it was actually pretty traditional in the area. So things like that. If there are other kinds of leave or other kinds of things to negotiate, that's an appropriate thing to list under other. All right. So after leave, we move to salary. Um, so the Book of Order gives the presbytery the responsibility of setting minimum compensation standards for pastoral calls. And so in May, our Commission on Ministers and Congregations brought an action to the presbytery that the presbytery approved, which was to increase our minimum compensation salary for 2025 to 64,600. That was anticipating the combination of inflation and also, yeah, cost of living. The annual cash salary can be split up in different ways that then create that total number. Part of it may be cash salary, part of it may be a housing allowance or manse offset. You probably already know that clergy occupy a peculiar place in the IRS tax code. But one of the benefits of that is being able to claim housing allowance and not pay employment tax on that. We pay self-employment, but we don't pay, yeah, yeah, we don't pay the salary tax on that. There goes my brain. Uh, and so that's something that needs to be negotiated and in writing. And so if the terms of call are held between the congregation, pastor, and presbytery, the congregation needs to vote on an annual basis to set that housing allowance. And if the terms of call are held between the session, the pastor, and the presbytery, the session needs to vote on an annual basis. That is one of the things that the IRS looks for. Has this been reapproved annually? So even if nothing's changing, to be able to show in minutes, which we Presbyterians are so good at, to be able to show in our minutes that yes, this was approved again for this calendar year. It can be done retroactively, and that has happened, but sometime during the year there needs to be an official action. We don't have a lot of manses, but we have a few. And so for pastors living in a house provided by the congregation, there is a requirement that the value of the manse must be reported as at least 30% of the effective salary amount. And the form shows how that works. That's more for the Board of Pensions, but similar to a housing allowance, the manse offset, the value of having a provided house, while not subject to income tax, is subject to the self-employment tax. And that's something to keep in mind. A possibility for the salary is defined compensations. For instance, if the pastoral leader negotiates that the church contributes to something like a 403B, a retirement savings plan, that is reported as part of the salary computations, because the Board of Pensions uses that for their dues calculations. And all of those, so those three things, the cash salary, housing allowance or manse offset, and any defined compensations, which is an above and beyond what a pastor may elect to contribute as deferred income. That's not reported here. This is what the congregation may be doing above and beyond that. Those things make up our total effective salary. And that's Board of Pensions language. It's something to hold on to. When the Board of Pensions talks about calculating dues for pension, death, and disability, or for medical benefits, total effective salary is the cash salary plus housing allowance or manse offset. What's not included, and so this is a change in the form that we hope will be helpful, because this is one of the places that can be really confusing. What's not included in total effective salary, but is compensation directly paid to the pastor, is the CICA offset. And several years ago now, Commission on Ministers and Congregations began requiring that all ministers entering into the presbytery must have, it is now a requirement to include the 50% CICA offset. And CICA is the Self-Employment Compensation Act or something like that. That's the IRS name. So for people who are employed by an organization, are not considered self-employed for tax purposes, they contribute out of their paycheck half of this amount, the 7.65%, and the employer contributes the other half. And those go to pay into Social Security, Medicare, because pastors are categorized as self-employed for IRS standards, even though we have agreements between congregations or sessions and the pastor. The IRS considers us self-employed. Pastors, clergy are required to pay 100% of the CICA. And so this requirement, the 50% CICA offset, is meant to help mirror what happens for most of employees in the United States. Anyone who gets a W-2 who's not self-employed. So that's why it's in place. It is meant to reduce some of that burden on pastors. Something to keep in mind is the CICA offset, that 7.65%, is subject to income tax and is not included in calculating Board of Pensions dues. So it's not part of effective salary, but it is part of direct monetary compensation. How are we doing, everybody? That's one of the more complicated pieces. Yeah, go ahead, Catherine. Go ahead and unmute as well. There you go.
Um, just getting back to effective salary elements, there's only three there. And we had the occasion because of COVID that we gave a one-time purse, if you would,
Hmm.
to our minister. And I had multiple conversations with you at the time. And I thought that that line, if I remember right, was on the form, but is not on this form. So my question is, when it's, I'll call it a purse or a financial contribution made by the congregation to the minister, where would you suggest we identify it?
Um, it wouldn't necessarily be reported on this form because this form is meant to report the annual agreements. Um, Now, if you are anticipating and if you include in what the session approves or what the congregation approves, any kind of bonus or gift like that, then there will be a place for. I would actually I would put that under defined compensations because the Board of Pensions does include the Board of Pensions says you are supposed to pay dues on any kind of gift like that. Um, so that would be the appropriate place to put it. Uh, but the intention of this form is to mirror the agreement between the pastor and congregation in session. And
So even though it isn't a 403B,
mhm.
you're
It
that
would
would
be a defined compensation though.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank you.
I think that's where it would fall. Yeah. Great question.
With the Sika offset there, you say it's to see it's to goes into Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah,
all
whatever it says on our W-2s.
yeah, okay. I was just curious if you're paying your pastor via W-2, you're already taking those taxes. Is this above and beyond that?
Um, you're not supposed to be taking their taxes. Uh, some pastors do. So some pastors negotiate with their treasurer to withhold the quarterly taxes, but for the IRS purposes, the pastor's supposed to be submitting, paying quarterly estimated payments. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So whether the church is withholding it because the pastor has negotiated that, or the pastor is doing it, um, we are saying that it should mirror what would normally happen and what you would do for other employees in the church. So if the church is doing it, then you're already including both of those would be my thought. But yeah, we occupy a weird place
Yeah, I know.
in the IRS tax code, and I was reviewing something the other day, and it said you must pay quarterly taxes. So I don't know. That's between you and your pastor. I'm not going to get in the middle of that. Yeah. But whoever's doing it, it needs to add up to 100%. So we move from there. So again, we've done the leave, and then salary elements, now Board of Pensions packages. And this is the other place. There are a lot of changes in 2025 that are impacting everybody, one way or the other. This is the place where we have another Book of Order mandate. So the Book of Order mandates that pastors that are called and installed, called by the congregation, elected by the congregation and installed, shall have to participate in the Board of Pensions medical and pension benefits. So once a pastor is installed, that's locked into place. That is a Book of Order mandate. Temporary pastors, who are real pastors too, are not covered by that mandate. It's only for the pastors elected by the congregation. And so temporary pastors, such as transitional pastors or bridge pastors, there's more flexibility. Having said that, though, the presbytery, who has the authority to set minimum compensation, we expect that all pastoral leaders will have medical coverage and will participate in some kind of retirement savings program. So with the Board of Pensions, here are the options. Starting in 2025, so this is as of January 1st, 2025. First is the covenant package, and the language of the Board of Pensions is this package offers income protection benefits, pension, death and disability, temporary disability, and the employee assistance plan, which gives employees access to counseling, to legal advice, and a host of other kinds of assistance. It's a pretty fantastic plan. The covenant package. So if you have any employees of the church, any employees, musician, administrator, secretary, sexton, or building manager, any employee of the congregation working a minimum of 20 hours a week is eligible to participate in the covenant package at a dues rate of 10% of effective salary. So this is a benefit if you are not offering it to your employees other than your pastoral leader. You can. And I know for myself, God called me to this. This was not what I was looking to do when I was, heading off to college. I had really different plans, and God came knocking on my door, and yeah, here you go. Here I am. We don't come into ministry, expecting to make the kinds of money that other people in my family have made. But we have a fantastic pension plan. We have a fantastic pension plan. It is the strongest pension plan for any denomination. And so to offer entrance into that for all of our employees who work a minimum of 20 hours a week is a gift we can give at 10%. So if you're paying a church secretary $30,000, for $3,000 they can be enrolled in the pension plan. After 3 or 5 years, they're vested, and also have access to the disability, death and disability. It's something you should do, something you should think about. So COMC is going to look for something like the covenant package for our temporary pastoral leaders. Now, our retired pastoral leaders have a different category. They're already getting pensions, so they don't fall under this. But anyone else, we're going to look to see, are they enrolled, if not in the Board of Pensions pension plan, if not in the covenant package, in something else. So covenant package. The congregational pastors package is what is replacing the current pastor's participation plan. So starting January 1st, 2025, the Congregational Pastors Package is available to any congregational pastoral leader working a minimum of 20 hours a week, but is mandated for installed pastors. So if you're installed and working 10 hours a week, it's still mandated. But it's available for any congregational leader, including our commissioned ruling elders, who have a terms of call for 20 hours a week or more. The total is 26% of effective salary, which includes 16% for medical coverage for the pastoral leader and 10% for income protection benefits, which is the same as the covenant package. There's no discount. The Congregational Pastors Package adds the dues for medical. On the form, you'll see the flat rate levels for additional family members. Because starting January 1st, 2025, only the pastor is covered by medical with that 26% of effective salary. And that's a significant change. The transitional pastor's participation is only available to those who are enrolled in the current pastor's participation plan program. And it continues the traditional program, which covers medical for the entire family, not just the pastoral leader, but it is, as you see, a 4% increase in dues. This year, the pastor's participation is 39%, and that's medical for the whole family, pension, death, and disability. Next year is 43%, and the year after that, it'll keep going up. It's only a 3-year program. Everyone is meant to either transition to the mandatory Congregational Pastors Package for installed pastors, or there's another possibility that we didn't put in here because, yeah, that's a different conversation. But this particular piece will go away in 3 years. I mentioned earlier that pastors who are retired and serving fall into a different category, and that's the post-retirement dues. So pastors who've retired, they're receiving their pension, but they are brought back to be a transitional pastor or a bridge pastor or fill in while another pastor's on medical leave. There is a dues offset of 12% that the Board of Pensions uses to help fund some of their creative programs and some of their support to new worshiping leaders, new worshiping community leaders, and some other things. So, yeah, retired pastors fall into a different category. And then this last piece, dependent coverage, with the change in the Board of Pensions dues, pastors and sessions and congregations are having to navigate what dues look like, what medical coverage looks like in 2025. The presbytery in May voted that we would continue to hold on to the priority of medical coverage for the entire family, not just the pastoral leader. There's more than one way to do that. So we're leaving that open, we're leaving that flexible, but one way or the other, we want to be assured that any members of the pastoral leader's family have medical coverage, whether it's through the Board of Pensions and the Congregational Pastors Package and the flat level rates, or it's through a spouse's employer, or it's through the marketplace, whatever it may be. We want to know that family members have medical coverage, that is something we value. With the changes, there can be some significant financial burdens on some of our congregations, and this is another place where if pastor, spouse, and children all need medical coverage, it's a jump. It's a big increase from this year. And if you need help, please let myself or your Commission on Ministers and Congregations liaison know. Because that's part of what makes us a connectional church, right? We help each other. Whew! That's Board of Pensions. Any questions?
So for that dependent coverage, do you expect anything to be provided to you as proof, I guess, that the dependents are covered?
Yeah, when on that form, it asks, there's a checkbox. Is
Okay.
everyone covered? And there's a checkbox as well that says coverage not needed. Because we have single pastors or in cases where a spouse may have medical coverage, coverage isn't needed. So we'll take a look at the form here in just a minute. And then we have our other benefits. Woohoo! MedWrap continues, but with the clarification that the medical wraparound is only for those who are enrolled in the Board of Pensions medical care. So with the shift, if a spouse's employer provides health care for the spouse and or children, they are not eligible for their out-of-pocket medical expenses to be reimbursed through the Presbytery's MedWrap. Only those who are covered through Board of Pensions will be eligible for that. So it's something to keep in mind. I know in one instance, yeah, it's part of the calculation going forward. And that continues at 2% of effective salary that comes to the Presbytery. The Presbytery administers the program. And this is another place where other employees are also eligible. So if other church employees also get their medical coverage through the Board of Pensions, they're eligible to participate in MedWrap through that 2% of effective salary. Like I said earlier, we have a minimum of a $500 continuing education reimbursement. And just the reminder that continuing education is what provides enrichment or renewal for the pastoral leader. It doesn't have to be obviously or directly connected to being a pastor. So it doesn't only count if it's a preaching seminar or a class at a seminary. If the pastoral leader wants to go on a silent retreat for spiritual renewal, that counts. That counts. Or if the pastoral leader has other interests. For instance, I've used part of my continuing education to buy some online Spanish courses. So I'm getting conversation classes and one-on-one tutoring because I want to become fluent in Spanish. So it's a broad category. We have a minimum of 2,000 for a combined category, travel, automobile, business, and professional. Instead of trying to split it out, make people, pastoral leaders, track different things, we're saying 2,000 minimum for that broad catch-all. And then there's supplemental medical options that would fall under the other benefits and the possibility of other vouchered allowances. And so this is another place where there's the possibility to do some creative things, as long as it's legal. But for instance, the Board of Pensions also offers vision care and dental care. And that might fall under the supplemental medical options. All right, those are the other benefits. Any other questions on that piece? All right, well, I'm going to stop sharing that then so I can pull up our jot form, the jot form, so you can see what this looks like. Whoops. There we go. So we've moved to a new platform for lots of reasons. I am sure all of you have worked with Donna at some point, as Donna and I were talking about how can we make the form easier? How can we make it something that actually calculates? Donna took all of the things we talked about. She did a lot of research, and we're giving JotForm a try. If you hate it, let us know, and we'll look for something else. We're experimenting, and I guess you are guinea pigs. Thank you. So this is what you'll see when you go to report your compensation and your terms of call. Yeah, Catherine.
Question is, when this was put up on the Presbytery website, it was the JOT form and there was a PDF version.
Yes.
So is the expectation that everybody who submits terms of call to the Presbytery use the JOT form?
That would be our preference. For some folks, we know that they will be more comfortable using the PDF, and that's okay. If they submit the filled out PDF to us, we are able to go in and enter it into the JOT form, so we have it all in one database. So that's fine. Whatever is easiest. The JOT form is supposed to, in our tests, it worked. The JOT form will do some calculations for you. Where the PDF won't, I don't think, embedded the equations. Yeah.
Can you export the JOT form out to a PDF?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So it starts off with we need to know which church and pastoral leader name and effective dates. I mean, sometimes it's a January to December, which is easiest. I know some churches, when a pastoral leader starts mid-year, they keep that timing. So an annual terms of call might be March 1st through February 28th or 29th, depending on the year. So we want to know what the effective dates are. And then this is a drop-down form to select the pastoral designation, what kind of pastor, full-time or part-time, how many hours a week. Full-time is 40, no matter, I mean, yeah, full-time is 40. I'll leave it at that. And then we've got our vacation grid. And so in what we were just going through, like I said, it's meant to mirror this. So if you have any questions, having the guidelines side by side is meant to be helpful, is meant to help fill in some blanks. So vacation. And then effective salary elements, as you see, 2025 minimum. Yeah, round all your numbers. You know, we round. We don't need to know about 5 cents. So the annual cash salary, housing allowance or manse offset, any defined compensations, which may include what Catherine was talking about, kind of a bonus that's predetermined, and then the total effective salary. And that it says 0 right now, so if I put any numbers in here, it would total that. So remember, effective salary is what the Board of Pensions uses for their dues calculations. So we go to compensation not included in effective salary, and that's that CICA offset. And I will change the language so it says the same thing in both places. So the CICA offset, and then we have total compensation, total salary paid to the pastor, which includes the effective salary and the CICA offset. We move to the Board of Pensions packages. Like it says, covenant package, it's 10% of that effective salary line. So you have to calculate that. JotForm's not quite smart enough to do that, but in the end, it will add it all up for you. So 10% of whatever the effective salary is, or congregational pastor's package, which is 26% in 2025. Something to note here, the Board of Pensions does establish, it's all highlighted now. Board of Pensions establishes a minimum dues of $6,000 and a maximum dues of $17,000. And that's because of the cost of medical care. There's no minimum for the covenant package, which is pension, death, and disability. But because of the cost of medical coverage, they have to receive at least a minimum of $6,000. Also, because of the cost of medical coverage, they've capped a maximum of $17,000 for this 26% of effective salary. And so we've included that information here for you. And then here are the dependent coverage options, which are available as a supplement only to the congregational pastor's package. And so for children or child, whether it's 1 or 10, it's the same amount. Spouse or the entire family, which would be spouse and children, or the no coverage needed, if that's the appropriate thing to choose here. And then the total, which may be 0 or one of these numbers. The next line is that transitional pastor's participation, which is the transitional, what we think of as the traditional plan. That's 43%, post-retirement dues 12%. And so as you're doing this form, anything that doesn't apply to your pastor and to your terms of call, you can put a 0 there. It shouldn't matter in terms of the running total, but if you aren't sure, you can put a 0 in anything that doesn't apply to you. And then we'll have the running total of the total compensation, effective salary, plus the CICA offset, plus the benefits. That will total up there in line 11. And then we have other benefits. MedWrap, continuing education with a minimum of $500, travel, automobile, business, professional, minimum of $2,000, any supplemental medical options that are included, any other kinds of vouchered allowances, whatever those might be. And then the total reimbursements not included in effective salary, it will add all those lines up for you. And then a final terms of call. All of that together creates the final terms of call, which is all of the salary compensation, any benefits through the Board of Pensions, any reimbursements or other benefits in that last category. A submission date, when are you filling it out? Here we're going to check again. Is everybody covered? All family members have full medical coverage through the Board of Pensions. All family members will have full medical coverage outside of the Board of Pensions, or family coverage does not apply. And so this middle one, if it's a mixed combination, so if the pastoral leader is being covered by the Board of Pensions, but spouse and children are being covered through the spouse's employer, then that's what you would click, is that middle option, indicating that the medical coverage is from outside of the Board of Pensions. We ask for the clerk of session contact. And then this is the other and last new thing on this form, asking for both whoever's submitting this, which may be the clerk of session, it may be a treasurer or head of HR, as well as the pastoral leader, that both people sign off on that. You can save and continue later, or submit. Which Donna added the language denotes session approval, or congregational approval in the case of called and installed pastor. Whoo! It's a lot. It's a lot. The goal is to as much as possible, simplify something that's complicated as we move into 2025 and the changes with the Board of Pensions to try to mirror our standards with how we report them and to be more helpful along the way. So please, you are the ones who are interacting with this at the congregational level. I am sure there are things we've missed. So please don't hesitate to reach out and say, but what about, or it might be helpful if, or this language is still confusing. Please, that will be, we want to make it better. We want to make it as user-friendly as possible. Any questions? Any more questions?
These are due when?
So
My
we,
first,
yeah, usually by the first quarter. Some churches are on a fiscal year instead of a calendar year. And so then they just let us know that the new terms won't be agreed to until June, July. Yeah, but usually it's after that
yeah,
annual, whatever
ours-
annual may be.
yeah, our congregational meeting isn't until February. So.
Yeah, so it'd be after that. It'd be after that. Yeah. So this the document I was walking through with you is one of our items of business on Saturday at the Presbytery meeting, asking because it's a significant revision, asking for the Presbytery to approve it. There's really not much that's different in it except reflecting the Board of Pensions changes. Yeah. But trying to make it clearer and more user friendly. Stunned y'all. And honestly, don't hesitate to reach out to me or to Donna. We've been eating and drinking this a bit for the past month or so. Uh, I'm not an expert in all of the stuff the Board of Pensions does, but I can speak with some pretty good confidence on these particular items now. Um, so yeah, don't hesitate to reach out if there are questions as you start working with it a little bit more.
Cindy, I think you did a really nice job of going through it in a very concise and clear way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, friends. Well, Saturday is our Presbytery meeting, and it's going to be fantastic. It is hybrid, so you can join us by Zoom or in person at First and Central Presbyterian Church in Wilmington, right across the street from the Hotel DuPont, where international leaders are staying because President Biden's having a group. So it'll be exciting in downtown Wilmington on Saturday. There's no street parking, by the way. Everyone will be in or at least there's no street parking around the church because of the dignitaries at the Hotel DuPont. We're going to invite them to come worship with us at 1:00. But you are welcome to as well. Our speaker for the morning is talking about how to read the Bible in broader ways so that God's living word takes on new depth. It's going to be a really good meeting. We have an examination for ordination in the afternoon, which is always a special treat. Yeah, so that's this Saturday. In the meantime, have a fantastic evening.